Now it's time for today's perspective. And my guest on the programme today has, I'm sure she'll admit, have one of the more unusual, highly specific jobs on the planet. She's worked on some of Europe's top films and television shows alongside the main actors and actresses, but not in front of the camera. What she does is she works with them to help them through their love scenes. How do you at least look like you're enjoying it or are happy with the situation when you're just acting and hundreds of crew are all watching, of course? And how do you avoid the other person you're in the scene with taking any advantage? Well, Paloma Garcia Martens is an intimacy coordinator, also an author. She's written a book called L'intimité sur un plateau, or intimacy on set, if you like. But what exactly is an intimacy coordinator? What's their role? And why in the modern world is it so important? Well, Paloma Garcia Martens joins us now. First of all, great to have you with us. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme. Explain to us in your words then exactly what it is that you do.
Well, an intimacy coordinator's job is not unsimilar to that of a stunt coordinator. So, you're going to have a fight scene on set, and somebody's going to fall down a flight of stairs after a punch. None of those scenes, those actions can be done real, because you would put the actors in danger, right? So you'll fake them. You'll fake them using sort of fight choreography techniques, camera angles, and you'll make sure that everyone can, keep doing their job and do the scene until we're happy with the result, right? And everyone's safe. Well, intimacy coordination is really very much the same idea. Is we're trying to tell a story. We're trying to tell it realistically so that the audience can believe it, but nobody's going to touch anybody's bits, right? Because that would not be safe. But it's also about having a frank conversation around consent and boundaries in an industry where that's just frankly not been the case. And so it's about shifting the way that we see work and we see vulnerability at play in art.
And where does this come from in the first place? I mean, why did you feel it was a necessary job and a necessary career that you needed to help people with?
Well, I've been working in film for a long time. I started in 2009, mostly as a costumer on set. So I was very close to the actors, to the conditions of work on a set that make things hard to stop and think about what's really happening. I've also been an actress as well. And then I had a kid and I realized, oh my goodness, how am I going to go back to work in an industry where I can feel that my values are not going to be aligned at all, where we've all lost a little bit of, we've lost the plot, I would say, in our humanity. So how do we treat each other? How do we do this? How do we tell stories about love without, with respecting people's humanity on set? And I've been a witness and I guess a victim of way too many situations that were unsafe. And a lot of the times they weren't necessarily malicious. So the intent wasn't to cause harm, but the system itself makes it so that, we're so pressed on time. There's a lot of money involved, a lot of egos. It's always make or break situations, because this could be your last ever job. So you're just going to go for it. We're all really tired because our days are very, very long. A lot of people are, abusing alcohol and substances to get through the day. So you can imagine the kind of situations that we can be put in.
And presumably, as you said that, presumably sometimes it can be very difficult and people are really very emotional about some of the things that have happened to them potentially.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all, trauma is all around us, unfortunately. As we can, trauma is on our screens every day as well. But sexual trauma is, it affects at least 1 in 2 people, regardless of gender, right? So sexual trauma is something that can happen, that can be reignited when you're on a set and you're filming a sex scene. It can be reignited with the simplest of, just actions, or the fact that your body is in a vulnerable situation. Intellectually, in your mind that this is fake, that you're just telling the story, that this character is not you, but your body doesn't know the difference. You inhabit the same, so your body and your brain you share that with your character, and sometimes it will affect you in ways that you had not foreseen. And it doesn't matter that everyone else had really great intentions. The fact is that you've done a simulated sexual assault scene and you still have flashbacks about it 4 years later. These are situations like almost every actor I've worked with had a horror story to tell me.
And presumably what's very difficult as well is knowing where the limit is. I mean, where your limit might be could be very, very different to the actor or the actress's limits, their own limits might be. So how do you know where that limit is and if somebody's crossed it?
Well, it's very hard because a lot of the times we cross our own limits, our own boundaries. And we're in a society where having these conversations is uncommon, so quite uncomfortable. And so we've dissociated us from our, the sensations in our bodies, because our bodies know when something's wrong, right? When a boundary is being crossed. But a lot of the times we are trained to not listen to it. But again, my job is also to make sure that people can do their job with an embodied sense of self, so that they're not dissociated. They don't have to, be on drugs or on alcohol to do the scenes. But if somebody wants to cross their own boundaries because it will get them where they want in their career, that is it's not my job to stop them. So you see what I mean? The consent is also about making sure that if you are aware of your boundaries and you decide to cross them, that's okay. That is your choice. So that's why people don't, there's a big misconception around my work, thinking that I'm the one who tell people about like what they should be doing, not be doing, what's boundary crossing. It's mostly, I'm giving you information so you can figure it out. We can figure it out together if you want, so that we can communicate where you're at. And sometimes it's just I don't know. And I don't know is information, so we can figure it out together. That means that we're going to have to pay more attention to your body during these scenes and maybe not rush through them and give space, because consent needs space to breathe, right?
And just finally, just wanted to ask you, I mean, do you feel that the television and the film companies are getting it right? I mean, do you think they're putting enough effort into ensuring that people are in a comfortable position?
Well, it's a bit of a loaded question, because when you think about it, our work, our job, the people who employ us, which are the companies, we're hired to tell them no. So the people who benefit from our job or expertise are not the people who have the power to hire us. So there's a way that a lot of the times I find that production will be trying to co-opt this idea of let's have an intimacy coordinator so it looks like we're working safely, rather than what can we do, what responsibilities can we take to think about how to make this set safer. And it's not just hiring an intimacy coordinator, it's also maybe not hiring abusers, right? Because I'm not going to be, because I've been asked to go on jobs where the director is a known abuser, a violent person, for instance, and I've had to say no, because I know that in this situation I can't be doing my job. So I feel like some productions really do take it to heart and want to do things better, but most productions are just trying to. There's not a lot of time. There's a lot of money involved, and it's a bit like greenwashing, right? I feel like, yeah, we're moving forward, but at the same time, a lot of the times they don't really want us to do our jobs the way that we should be doing them. They're fighting for our rates. They're trying to get people who aren't trained fully to do the job so that they can tick a box, but at the same time, that person's never going to challenge, power on set, which is what our job is. So I find that sometimes it feels like one step forward, two steps back at the moment. I still have hope that, maybe a new generation of productions will, understand what they have to change about, the work that they're doing.
Good to have you with us on the programme today. Thanks very much, Paloma Garcia Martens,
Thank you.
Joining us here on Today's Perspective, and the book out, Intimacy on Set, as it's called in English. Thanks very much for being with us.